If I've talked to you in the last 6 months, there's a very good chance I've asked you if you could name the largest seed in the world and the smallest seed in the world. Care to guess, listeners? They are both seeds that can travel hundreds of miles on their own. One rides on the oceans and the other rides in the wind. Today, we're talking about the adventurous lives of coconuts and orchids.
Starting perennial seeds indoors is one of those gardening topics that sounds simple until you try it. Unlike annuals, perennials take their time, they're thinking long term, and for gardeners in Minnesota, starting them from seed can open the door to more plant options, stronger plants, and significant cost savings. Today we're talking through how to start perennial seeds indoors and the different methods you can use.
Hello and welcome to the Petal and Plot Pod, a seasonal plant stories and garden tips podcast. We're your hosts. I'm Anissa.
And this is Eric.
Okay, picture a tropical beach. Palm trees leaning towards turquoise water, and at the edge of a tide line, a coconut. What we casually call a coconut is actually a seed inside a floating survival capsule. Botanically, it's a drupe, like a peach, but engineered to travel the ocean. So let's break down the layers of a coconut. We have the smooth outer green skin, which is sometimes removed before sale, and then the thick fibrous husk, the mesocarp, that traps air inside. This makes the coconut buoyant, and it can float with most of its shell above the water, which reduces salt intrusion. Then we have the hard inner shell that protects the embryo from physical damage and saltwater exposure. And inside the shell, we have the sterile, fresh coconut water and the solid white meat, the food that fuels the seedling after landing. It's basically a life raft and a lunchbox in one. So, Eric, are you a lover or a hater of coconut water and coconut meat?
Oh, I like all coconut. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I love to eat anything that's made of coconut, or when I've traveled or been on vacation, I feel like I've eaten it straight from the seed itself. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love them both too. Although I don't really buy them a lot to have around the house, like once in a while. But yeah, I love having a fresh coconut when I'm traveling that someone's like hacked the top off and put a straw in it.
Mm.
Yum. I like sipping the water. It's so good. And I will also try to awkwardly scrape as much meat out of that little opening
Mhm.
as I can. But I have also definitely spent like a stupid amount of time trying and failing to open a coconut on my own. So it is
Yeah.
a real treat to
Skill.
run into.
It's a skill.
It's a skill, yeah. It's a real treat to run into someone who knows how to handle a machete because I'm not going to succeed. Have you ever tried to open one on your own?
No, and I instantly thought of a story with like a machete that was not good for me back when I was in my college days. So I don't think should be allowed to have that large of a sword
Forbidden.
to open my food by any
Yeah.
means.
Yeah. Yeah, I would not trust myself with that task at all.
The one thing I was curious when you were talking about the parts of the coconut as a seed, like I kept thinking of, and maybe we'll talk about this, is that, coconut water as part of the seed? Because in my
Mhm.
mind, I think of the seeds we plant, and I don't think of anything liquidy within those seeds.
Yeah. Yeah, that really makes the coconut unique that it can travel with its own fresh water across oceans.
Hmm.
And experiments and ocean current modeling show that a coconut can remain viable after floating in seawater for up to 3 months, and sometimes longer if conditions are mild. Ocean currents move about 10 to 30 miles or 15 to 50 kilometers per day in many tropical regions. That means the coconut could potentially drift hundreds to over 1,000 miles on its own. And throughout the world, the realistic sort of natural dispersal route include crossing the Indian Ocean in between Southeast Asia and East Africa, across the Pacific Ocean in between all of the island chains, and along tropical coastlines via currents and storm surges. However, coconuts are unlikely to cross entire oceans unaided on a regular basis. Long distance jumps, like to the Americas or across vast vast Pacific gaps were strongly shaped by human voyaging, especially by Austronesian sailors thousands of years ago. They carried coconuts in their canoes and planted them on islands as reliable sources of food, drinking water, fiber for rope, and building materials. Coconuts were kind of like survival kits for ocean explorers. When a coconut washes ashore on a new tropical beach, it may land in warm sand above the tide line. Then the rain will soak the husk, causing it to rot, and the shell will crack, and a shoot will emerge from one of the three eyes on the coconut, and a new palm begins. The roots push downwards while a shoot grows upwards, and the seedlings live off stored coconut meat for months before photosynthesis fully takes over. Nut palm trees generally take about 6 to 10 years to grow from a seed to initial fruit production, reaching full maturity and peak production around 15 to 20 years of age, though they can live up to 60 to 80 years. Before there's a coconut, though, there is a flower. Coconut palms produce large branching clusters of small flowers. Each cluster has both male flowers to produce pollen and female flowers to develop into coconuts. Pollination happens in a couple different ways. One, through insects, of course. Bees, flies, beetles, wasps visit the flowers for nectar and pollen. And the wind also will carry the pollen, especially in dense groves. Oh my goodness. It feels like it has been below zero here for like 17 weeks. Like, I feel like we need to take this podcast on the road to broadcast from a plant destination.
Yeah, I feel like we should do a little more like, in place research, right?
Mm-hmm.
And visit
Yeah.
where the coconuts are and everything
Mm-hmm.
else so that we can
Yeah. I think
properly
properly
podcast on
examine,
these.
yep, properly examine the flowers, properly document to the islands. Now, from ocean giants to floral tricksters, orchids are one of the largest plant families on Earth, with over 25,000 different species found on every continent except Antarctica. Their secret to global success? Airborne seeds. Orchids are famous for elaborate pollination strategies as well, especially with bees. Many orchids don't offer simple nectar rewards. Instead, they use deception, perfume, or precise engineering. Some tropical orchids, like Catasetum or Euglossa pollinated orchids, produce powerful scents. Male orchid bees collect these fragrances to use in courtship displays. Some orchids mimic the appearance and scent of female bees. So male bees will attempt to mate with the flower, and in doing so, accidentally pick up pollen. Certain orchids have trigger mechanisms that can literally catapult pollen onto visiting bees. Orchid pollination is often extremely species specific. One orchid species may rely on just one type of bee. Once pollinated, an orchid pod forms and may contain hundreds of thousands to several million seeds in one seed pod.
Wow.
I know, wow, right? Each seed
Yeah.
is about the size of a speck of dust and light enough to be lifted by rising warm air. Most orchid seeds travel tens to hundreds of meters away from the parent plant, but under the right wind and thermal conditions, they can be carried miles away and occasionally even higher into the atmosphere, enabling rare long-distance dispersal events between valleys, islands, or mountain slopes. Over evolutionary time, these rare long trips allowed orchids to spread across the continents. Orchid seeds will settle almost everywhere, but only a few places let them grow. They must land where moisture is available, light levels match the species needs, and the right mycorrhizal fungus lives. Because unlike coconuts, orchid seeds have almost no food stored inside, and they cannot sprout alone. They must land in soil or bark where a specific type of fungus lives. The fungus enters the seed and then provides nutrients, and only then can the orchid begin to grow. This partnership is called mycorrhizal symbiosis. Without that fungal partner, the seed simply dies. Orchids survive by releasing so many seeds, only a few win this ecological lottery. Orchid seeds have been drifting on air currents for tens of millions of years. In the 17 and 1800s, plant collectors became obsessed with orchids and what they called orchid fever. Explorers shipped living plants across oceans and spread species far beyond their native ranges. And today, orchids also travel the world through greenhouses and nurseries and homes. And Eric, we just had the chance to go to the orchid show at the conservatory here. It was so beautiful.
Yeah, it
Um,
was.
what are your takeaways?
I was amazed just on the different types of orchids. Like I knew obviously there's different types of orchids, but to see them all in one place in such variety, and not just color, right? But like the forms and shapes and even ones that weren't really even producing flowers were just unique.
Mm.
So yeah, it was a really cool show to check out and see. Not to mention it was at the conservatory, which is much warmer indoors than it was outdoors. So
Yeah, it was a little mini vacation from it being, I think it was 8 below proper and like 15 or something below wind chill or 20 below wind chill. It was really cold.
it was. So to walk into a nice, warm and humid space
Yeah,
was really
yeah,
cool. Yeah.
it
What did
was a
you take away?
balm.
What was your thoughts?
Well, gosh, it's just so pretty. I have this theory that probably isn't true that purple orchids smell better than other colors of
I
orchids.
did
This is not.
notice you walking around smelling the purple orchids.
I was getting
I
in there. I
noticed
was
it.
sniffing them. I was like trying to personally like, is this correct? I don't think it don't. I hope nobody listens to me when I say that because I don't even know if that's correct. But yeah, I was trying to test the theory out, and it's just so fun to see the varieties of them um how like weird they look when they're young. Like with those little
Uh,
rectangles of plastic that look like they just had like
oh, yeah.
an alien had spawned on this piece of plastic, and it was
Yeah.
kinda
Like these
creepy.
tentacle worms or something
Yeah,
just attaching
tentacle
and is like
worms.
ready to like jump out at you kind of thing. Like it was like alien for
Yeah.
sure.
Oh, yeah, I was kind of surprised by my kind of visceral reaction to what those looked like, I guess, but,
Yeah.
in the end, they'll produce some nice flowers.
Yeah. But crazy to think when you were talking about just like the how tiny the seeds are and obviously millions of them being produced for, right? Which always
Mhm.
I feel like is conducive to like most plants if they produce really small seeds, like they have many of them, versus one large coconut or something. And so it's always interesting to think how that's done. But I didn't know that for orchids there was like a symbiosis that happened as well. It kind of almost feels like that seed was produced like without, any real benefits of being a seed.
Mhm.
It's not as though you can just drop anywhere and grow like some small seeds or other seeds will. Like it really needs the perfect environment to do so.
Yeah, learning that they need that fungus to actually
Yeah.
grow up kind of blew my mind. So it's like there's so many species, but yet when you think about how they're traveling and what they need to survive, that seems so random. Like, but yet they persevere.
Yeah.
They're making it.
They're there and there's many different types of them. We saw them. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, coconuts travel far, but slowly. Riding predictable ocean highways, carrying food and water like a survival capsule, and orchids travel farther by chance, riding invisible wind highways, gambling on numbers and microscopic fungal allies. One depends on buoyancy and stored energy, and the other depends on air currents and underground partnerships. But both strategies, and both the biggest seed and the littlest seed in the world, have shaped tropical coastlines, rainforests, and mountain ecosystems across the world.
It's time to talk a little bit about seed starting and specifically with perennials. So I feel like before we get started, Anissa, have you grown perennials from seed before?
No, I haven't.
Bet you have, because I remember you talking about it, and I think you're lying right now. I recall a story in another podcast about some coneflower or echinacea you've taken and sprinkled into your yard.
Oh,
So
yes. Oh my gosh. In my
technically,
mind, I was literally only thinking about shrubs. When you said that for some reason, I was just thinking
uh,
about shrubs. Of course, I have planted
yeah,
perennial flowers. That's
that's right.
I guess.
I know some people definitely do that sometimes with like avocados, right? And
Mhm.
they want to test out just growing the seed and seeing what happens. And many times it
Yeah.
works. So
That's
Um,
fun. There was one time or one year that I had, noticed in my compost pile, I had 3 plants, really strong-looking plants growing up, and I went to look closer, and they were avocado plants that sprouted from the seeds that I'd thrown in my compost, and they were, like, 2 feet tall.
Probably didn't survive the winter unless you took them inside.
I didn't.
So, we're going to talk a little bit just about starting perennial seeds, but indoors. We did do a podcast just on like winter sowing, which is another great way to sow perennial flowers outdoors for us. But one of the most important things to understand about perennial seeds is that they don't behave necessarily like annuals. So, many perennials sometimes take longer to germinate, which is to go from seed to that little sprout that you see, grow slowly many times in their first season. Sometimes you don't get flowers really until year 2, or they're even considered biennials. So they more than likely won't produce flowers until their second year. And so they really focus on like root development instead of flowers. And so for many varieties, year 1 is about survival, not blooming. That's not a failure. It's kind of how perennials are designed to grow, especially in colder climates. So, when thinking of like your standard indoor seed starting process, you're going to start with the most straightforward method. So, just something that doesn't need cold treatment. These are perennials that just need like warmth, moisture, and light. Things like black eyed Susans, Shasta daisies, Coreopsis, yarrow, some types of the purple coneflower Echinacea. And you really just need a fine textured, sterile seed starting mix, yellow container with drainage, bright grow lights positioned close to the seeds, unless you're doing some of the more intense like grow lights that you can get out there, and then consistent moisture, but not saturation. And so seeds are usually planted shallowly, usually with many of those varieties, and often just pressed into the soil and lightly covered. Um, Anissa, are there 1 or 2 perennials you would totally recommend people start with when they think of like doing something new, starting a seed indoors as a perennial?
Starting it indoors,
Hmm.
um,
I know, because outdoors is a different game.
yeah.
So,
Well, I feel like echinacea is a good starting point for starting something indoors.
agreed.
Yeah, pretty satisfying.
Yeah, I've had really good luck with definitely the echinacea or coneflower. I've done yarrow and had really good success there. And it kind of a lot of those I feel like, grow well out, in your garden. Many times, if they're the reseeding type, they may just reseed themselves in your garden. But if you don't have any of them, and let's say you're wanting to add a good bunch of echinacea to kind of make a statement, it's great to do it from seed because you can save a lot of money by doing that versus buying individual gallon sized plants from the nursery too, right? If you're okay
Mhm,
with just a little patience and
mhm.
time, you will have the same outcome. And there's something to say of like starting new seedlings and things young in your garden, planting them out. They many times establish better
Mhm,
than something that maybe is root bound or has been in a pot for a long part of its life too.
definitely.
Yeah. Cold stratification, which we've talked about before, is a big part many times with perennials. So many perennials native to colder regions required this cold stratification process, which is a period of cold and like moist conditions that kind of mimic winter. And so some of those common types that need stratification would be like milkweed or butterfly weed, swamp milkweed, delphinium, lavender, prairie smoke, which I love, such a cool
Mhm,
plant,
me too.
meadow sage, liatris, which is another really cool plant, I think.
Mhm.
And so there are 2 common indoor kind of approaches that people talk about. So, like, one option is for stratification to give them that cold period. If they're not outside, some people will just place the seed packet within your cooler or freezer. I just put mine in the fridge for like 3 months of the winter and then start planting them out. You can also place the seeds in actual like moist medium or soil, and kind of basically put the pot into the refrigerator. I wouldn't put it in the freezer, but I'd put it in the refrigerator if you're using that soil, and placing that whole entire container in the refrigerator. And so after the cold period, then you take those seeds out and move them under lights to germinate, and kind of grow on. So I've never done the process of putting the soil in my refrigerator. Maybe that's just because my partner wouldn't like me to take up more room in the refrigerator for that. But have you ever done that, Anissa, or heard someone that's utilized that method?
No, I haven't, but I think you need to have a garage refrigerator for that, right? Like,
Yes, right?
next time you get a
Absolutely.
new fridge, put the old one in the garage, and then that'll be the dedicated plant fridge.
Exactly that. Although I wouldn't even need one because I have a detached garage, so no refrigerator needed. It's still gonna freeze in there.
Oh, yeah.
The other thing to do with sometimes perennial seeds is called scarification. And I think we've talked about this once before too, but some perennial seeds don't need cold, but they do need like help breaking through like a hard seed coat. And this process is called scarification. And so seeds that would benefit from that would be things like lupine, milkweed, false indigo. They're usually really hard seeds that have really thick coats. And so this can be done by lightly sanding the seed coat, nicking it, or soaking the seeds in warm water overnight before planting. And the goal is to simply to allow moisture to penetrate, not to necessarily damage the seed itself. So I have a story on this because when I learned, oh, the seed I just bought, it was a lupine, needed to be have a scarification. I was like, what is that? Googled it and was like, okay, understand what's supposed to happen, but I didn't understand the concept of like, well, how much am I nicking it or
Mm.
doing it? And so like, I think I probably cut the seed in half pretty much, and then was like planting it, which is not what you're supposed to do. Later learning, like I could have just lightly sanded it. Is
Mm.
all it needed. So I feel like clarification in my learning experience to everyone out there, hey, you can just lightly sand it. You don't need to like crack the actual seed itself.
Oh, that's good advice.
Have you been in practice with scarifying your seeds before?
Only have done that with lupines. Yep.
Yeah.
My endless journey of trying to grow lupines.
Yeah, right. I'm just last year bought a false indigo or baptisia plant, and so I'm curious if I get seeds on that, if I see if I can grow more of it. But keep in minding maybe the scarification I may need to do on those seeds. So,
Well, I wonder too, with Baptisia, if you got seed pods and then you left them out over
hmm
winter, like you do with
yeah,
like beans or legumes,
right.
like green bean, and then just plant them, just put the seeds in the ground. I wonder if that would work.
Yeah, I think it would. I say that because I feel like I've had also the experience of like didn't really scarify something, but I planted it deep. It just may take longer for that outer seed coat to break down, and you'll
Mm,
need some
mhm,
moisture and the elements I feel like to help with that.
mm,
Because you're right, many of plants, like lupine, will reseed themselves, especially like milkweed as well. And so I
mhm,
feel like, mimicking some of those things and going through a winter, that's why, like, we talk about winter sowing for many of these things is beneficial because there's less work. Once your perennial seed germinates, the kind of focus shifts to like steady, consistent care, right? We need to become all plant parents and baby them. And so having those strong grow lights on for like 14 to 16 hours a day, usually use a timer, is an easy way to keep that. Usually cooler temperatures after germination. So if you're using a heat mat or anything like that, eliminate that. It needs to be in cooler temps. And then bottom watering to kind of help prevent disease so you don't get any dampening off that many times can happen. And then just make sure there's good air circulation. If you don't, sometimes I set up like just a little fan in the area to move air around. Also, kind of creates stronger seedlings that kind of have that air pushing them around a little bit, toughens them up.
mm, uh-huh,
And so perennials often grow slowly, kind of at this stage, so which is normal, and they're kind of developing those roots first. So don't be discouraged if you're like, why isn't it growing faster? Or you're growing annuals next to it, and you may see like a big difference. That's normal. Also, overwatering can cause problems because sometimes people think, oh, it needs more water, or possibly even like, oh, do I give it fertilizer?
mm,
And so it's important to kind of be patient and let the plant do it. If the soil is wet, it obviously doesn't need any more water. You don't want to start fertilizing until it has at least two true leaves to the plant because too early can scorch the plant basically. Nisa, have you had any like learnings in just like seed planting and like what like common issues or things have you come across and learned from during your time?
Yeah, well, when you were talking about having a fan going, I think that is such a great idea because I have sometimes struggled with the perfect amount of moisture. And if it's too moist, you get that little kind of like white layer of mold that can happen on top of the dirt. I've definitely had that as an issue before, just maintaining the right balance of water regularly. But yeah, and with that fan too, getting them to grow up nice and strong and used to the wind. I think too, I've also like had some issues with light because I don't have grow lights, so I just use my windows, which haven't really been enough. I don't really have the right windows to not have grow lights. And so I ended up kind of even starting things from seed for a while and just like going to nurseries and getting seedlings because of this. But, I think having the right amount of light is obviously going to make or break the plant.
Yeah. You mentioned about like the mold or whatever. Do you use vermiculite or anything like that?
I wasn't back then, no.
Ah, yeah, yeah, yeah. That has been like a game changer for me because I would come across the same thing and have like the green mold and then potential dampening off.
Mhm.
And so adding like a thin layer of vermiculite on top has really made a difference in that because it suppresses the things in the soil to be receiving light so strongly, but then also offers better airflow. And so like it really helps balance the plant out. So like I use vermiculite religiously on any new seedling I'm growing.
So you sprinkle it on top, you don't mix it into the soil. You just have
No,
like a
just a
layer?
layer on top. Yeah, a dry
Okay.
layer sitting on top. That's all.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah.
That's great
Yeah.
advice.
Yeah, it works really well. And you can also do it for things that just need to be barely covered. So I don't even cover it. I just put a layer of vermiculite on top because there is light that
Oh.
penetrates through the vermiculite. And so it'll still get light that's needed. Yeah. So now your plant's grown and as seedlings kind of mature, they can be potted up, which may be the case because some of us may have to start them early in like February and then come like March. Sometimes it feels like they need to be potted up again. And so you may pot them up and then you'll start hardening them off gradually to then get planted outdoors once it's past the risk of like frost. The goal is for the first year is like work on healthy plants, not necessarily flowers, maybe. And then many perennials won't bloom until year two, even. So don't be discouraged if you're like, why does it just have foliage? What's going on? It does take a little more time than annuals that grow very rapidly in our gardens. So be aware of that as you move your plants. So, do we have a listener question for us today, Anissa?
Yes, absolutely. Larry writes in and asks, I would love to add more shrubs to my yard, but the price of shrubs in nurseries is often out of my budget. Are there any shrubs that I can start by seed that won't take 10 years to reach its size?
Feel like I need to think about this one.
Yeah, I suppose especially with evergreens. Well,
Um,
the first thing that comes to my mind is not even seeds, but like cuttings. Like,
yeah.
propagates from a branch, because like, I guess that's how I was trying to think if I had started any shrubs from seed, but I have started shrubs from
Mhm.
cuttings, like, that's how I got my elderberry.
Yeah, I was gonna say that too. I feel like cuttings are probably the fastest way to get something even sooner than from a seed, because a seed will be so small. At least a cutting, you can already almost start with a stick,
Mhm.
a branch to kind of go off of, and you'd be surprised how quickly many of them will grow roots and grow for you.
Yeah. Like
Um,
willow and dogwood, I hear
mhm.
people a lot just take cuttings and stab them into the ground. But I think if you really wanted to have a high success rate, you could add some rooting hormone to the cutting.
Mhm.
Make sure it
Yeah.
stays watered. But what other shrubs grow fast? Like,
I've I've seen things like elderberry or like New Jersey
mhm.
tea or St. John's wort sometimes
Yeah.
be
Forsythia
ones.
grows pretty fast.
Yeah. So I feel like some
What
of
I
those
think
would
what
be good
gila
ones.
too. Oh, and
It's
hibiscus, the perennial
And
hibiscus
hibiscus, yeah, that would be
is
another
pretty
good one.
fast growing.
I feel like the reality is when you talk perennial flowers, growing something from seed doesn't take so long to get to maturity or flowering stage comparatively.
Mhm.
And then you talk shrubs or trees, and the reality why many people will buy those plants at the garden center is because there's already been multiple years in that
Mm-hmm.
plant by the time you even are buying the smallest pot of them, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel like that's a little bit of you get what you pay for. So
You could probably get cuttings for free from some friends or neighbors and then buy a little package of rooting hormone. So the faster growing ones, definitely like willow, dogwood, forsythia, gila, privet.
they're all good lists.
They're fast. Those are, I'm just trying to
Yeah.
think of what grows fast.
Yeah. I've always had success with like willows and dogwood very easily.
Hmm.
Not even using
Yeah.
rooting hormone, but fresh cuts just put straight into the moist dirt is like almost
Yeah.
all you need.
Definitely. Yeah, when I planted my elderberry that I just took a cutting from, I think I just put it in a bottle of water and then
Yeah.
it sprouted a little root and then I stuck it in the ground. I didn't do
Mm.
anything else to it and it grew really those grow really fast.
Yep.
Those are fast growing shrubs, especially if they have a lot of water.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure.
And sun, I guess
Mm.
that's the other thing too. If you want something to grow fast, make sure it's getting enough sun because if it's too shady, it won't grow very fast, if
Sometimes
at all.
think that goes without saying, but you're absolutely right. Yep. It does need sun or grow lights for sure. You can't put it in the shade if that's not where it's going to grow, anyways.
Mhm.
So some seeds will pop right up, others will take their time, and a few will wait until you've completely given up before doing anything at all. But when those plants come back year after year, it's worth it. So label your trays, trust the process, and don't throw anything out too early. Thanks for listening. We'll be back here next time and probably waiting right along with you.
Bye, everyone.
Goodbye.
If you have a gardening question you'd like us to answer, please write to us at petalandplot@gmail.com. And if you've enjoyed this episode, please share it with someone you know and click the follow button to hear our next episode.
As garden designers here at Petal and Plot, we also offer year-round in-person and virtual gardening consultations and custom garden designs. Please reach out to us if you'd like to set one up. Want to see more of what we're up to? Please follow us on Instagram at Petal and Plot. That's PETALNPLOT.